are on a path to creating a world where man can control machine through thoughts alone. But if we can control machine, can machine also control us?
Artificial intelligence is software that writes itself. It writes its own updates. It renews itself.
This whole conspiracy to enslave humanity is a psychological game. You're not going to sell a tyranny by telling people it's a tyranny.
Normally tend to think of software as stuff that we created and that we wrote, and the machines do what we tell them to do and we own it. This is not any longer true. It writes itself at speeds that we can hardly comprehend.
The overall effect of this technology is one that can control the mood, the attitudes, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and thus the motivations and then the actions of the target.
And people who write it know that you can't take it apart again and figure out what it's done. It writes independently, autonomously. It develops its own way of thinking. And there are dangers associated with it.
It is a highly illegal program. It is being abused by people who have no regard for the welfare of those people who are being experimented upon. They're evil in a way that I cannot understand and I do not want to understand.
So a lot of people ask, when is it going to happen? When is artificial intelligence going to be smarter than us people? Some people say 50 years. Some say 30 years. Some say 5 years. I say it already has surpassed us in many areas of our society.
All day, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is a highly sophisticated technology. It is one that produces literal and total and complete mind control over the targeted individual. There are millions of Americans across this country that are crying out for help.
Now I want you to understand what the power of artificial intelligence is, and I have two examples. One is surveillance cameras. Everybody knows, that we're being watched by cameras everywhere, and most people think surveillance is a camera there and it's me down here and it's watching me. One person, one camera. Well, that's because we're stupid. That's the way we comprehend the surveillance. One camera, one person. We can't comprehend it when it goes beyond that.
The multiple systems can focus on isolating an individual, group, community, or large population by algorithm. The Directed Energy Weapon Attack System also employs phased array cellular tower antennas as biosensors, transmitters, and receivers, capable of operation from computerized portable systems as close as neighboring locations. Satellites link the sender and the receiver.
The victim is remotely tied to this supercomputer, which uses physical and psychological trauma, torture, to map out and reverse engineer the sensory and neural pathways of the victim's brain and central nervous system. It's brutal, brutal torture. Brutal torture. Unlike anything you can imagine, you can't negotiate with a computer. You can't compromise with a computer. You can't surrender to a computer. The computer will continue to do what it's programmed to do.
Citizens can be selected at random for horrible targeting. Using covert psychotronic, advanced electromagnetic technology beamed from state-of-the-art operations centers globally.
Could we all become robo-humans?
Automated computers, supercomputer software programming will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America, and it can all be done remotely.
Those who seriously challenge the corrupt system by exposure face the mental illness tag. Coercive, non-stop, covert, psychophysical energy weapon torture to silence them and shorten their lifespan.
Now, we have to be very careful because survival is an issue for artificial intelligence. It needs to exist to be able to do the things it wants to do according to its program. So it lays, like insect eggs, backups and computer programs all over the world, thousands and thousands of them, so that if we do destroy part of it, it's still alive. My job to you is the wake-up call to make you aware of the problem. Your job is to figure out how we're going to stop this before it kills us.
Because if one company or a small group of people manages to develop godlike digital superintelligence, they can take over the world. At least when there's an evil dictator, that human is going to die. But for an AI, there would be no death. It would live forever. And then you'd have an immortal dictator from which we can never escape.
At some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. We don't know who struck first, us or them, but we know that it was us that scorched the sky.
The robots going down the streets, they're like, what are you talking about? Man, we want to make sure we don't have killer robots going down the street. Once they're going down the street, it is too late. Google acquired DeepMind several years ago. DeepMind operates as a semi-independent subsidiary of Google. The thing that makes DeepMind unique is that DeepMind is absolutely focused on creating digital superintelligence, an AI that is vastly smarter than any human on Earth and ultimately smarter than all humans on Earth combined.
This is from the DeepMind reinforcement learning system. Basically wakes up like a newborn baby and is shown the screen of an Atari video game and then has to learn to play the video game. It knows nothing about objects, about motion, about time. It only knows that there's an image on the screen and there's a score. So if your baby woke up the day it was born and by late afternoon was playing 40 different Atari video games at a superhuman level, you would be terrified. You would say, my baby is possessed, send it back.
I mean, the DeepMind system can win at any game. It can already beat all the original Atari games. It is superhuman. It plays the games at super speed in less than a minute. DeepMind's AI has administrator-level access to Google's servers to optimize energy usage at the data centers. However, this could be an unintentional Trojan horse. DeepMind has to have complete control of the data centers, so with a little software update, that AI could take complete control of the whole Google system, which means they can do anything. They can look at all your data, they can do anything. We're rapidly headed towards digital superintelligence that far exceeds any human. I think it's very obvious.
Talk about your time allocation. I think one of the things you spend an awful lot of time thinking about, I know, is artificial intelligence. It's something that you and I have as a shared interest, and it's something that our audience is interested in as well. The question here is, a lot of experts in AI don't share the same level of concern that you do about the dangers of AI.
Fools.
What
Famous last words.
What specifically do you believe that they don't?
Well, the biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. In general, we are all much smarter than we think we are, but much less smart, dumber than we think we are, by a lot. So this tends to plague smart people. They just can't. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them. So they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation. I'm really quite close to. I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows. And the rate of improvement is exponential. You can see this in things like AlphaGo, which went from, in the span of maybe 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player to then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who had been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously. Then there was AlphaZero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And AlphaZero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, it literally read the rules, play the game, and be superhuman for any game. Nobody expected that rate of improvement. If you ask those same experts who think AI is not progressing at the rate that I'm saying, I think you will find that their predictions for things like Go and other AI advancements have their batting average is quite weak. It's not good. We'll see this also with self-driving. I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200% safer than a person by the end of next year. We're talking like maybe 18 months from now. NHTSA did a study on Tesla's Autopilot version 1, which is relatively primitive, and found that it was a 45% reduction in highway accidents. And that's despite Autopilot 1 being just version 1. Version 2, I think, will be at least 2 or 3 times better. That's the current version that's running right now. So the rate of improvement is really dramatic. We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. I think that's the single biggest existential crisis that we face, and the most pressing one.
And how do we do that? I mean, if we take it that it's inevitable at this point, that some version of AI is coming down the line, how do we steer through that?
Well, I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And so therefore, there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads, by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane.
Well, it's a question you've been asking for a long time, and I think it's a question that's come to the forefront over the last year, where you begin to realize that it doesn't necessarily, I think if we've all been focused in on the idea of artificial superintelligence, right, which is clearly a danger, but maybe a little further out. What's happened over the last year is you've seen what I've been calling artificial stupidity. You're talking about, algorithmic manipulation of social media. Like we're in it now. It's starting to happen. How do we? What's the intervention at this point?
I'm not really all that worried about the short-term stuff. Things that are, like narrow AI is not a species-level risk. It will result in dislocation, in lost jobs, and sort of better weaponry and that kind of thing. But it is not a fundamental species-level risk, whereas digital superintelligence is. So it's really all about laying the groundwork to make sure that if humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. Very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do. And that AI risk is that, I guess there's sort of a benign AI, and that we're able to achieve a symbiosis with that AI. Ideally, the AI, there's somebody who, I can't remember his name, but had a good suggestion for what the optimization of the AI should be. What's its utility function? You have to be careful about this because if you say maximize happiness, and the AI concludes that happiness is a function of dopamine and serotonin, so it captures all humans and injects your brain with large amounts of dopamine and serotonin. Like, okay, it's not what we meant.
It sounds pretty good, though.
Oh, you'll love it. Well, I like the definition of like, the AI should try to maximize the freedom of action of humanity. Maximize the freedom of action. Maximize freedom, essentially. I like that definition. But we do want a close coupling between collective human intelligence and digital intelligence. Neuralink is trying to help in that regard by creating an interface between, a high bandwidth interface between AI and human brain. We're already a cyborg in the sense that your phone and your computer are kind of an extension of you.
Just low bandwidth input output.
Exactly, it's just low bandwidth, particularly output. I mean, 2 thumbs basically.
So how do we solve that problem?
The bandwidth thing?
The bandwidth issue. I mean, we've all succumbed to it now. We're all cyborgs. We're just low efficiency cyborgs. So how do we make it better?
I think we've got to build an interface. Like we didn't evolve to have a communications jack, or some. So there's got to be essentially vast numbers of tiny electrodes that are able to read write from your brain. Of course, security is pretty important in this situation, to say the least.
I was going to say, I'm not coming with. I'm keeping my brain air-gapped.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people will choose to do that. But it's a bit like Ian Banks' neural lace. Mm-hmm. But in the case of neural lace, it's sort of that's there from when you're born, or it's more of a
backup.
Sorry?
It's a backup.
Yeah, kind of a backup. This would be, there's a digital extension of you that is an AI, the AI extension of you, a tertiary layer of intelligence. So you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and the tertiary layer, which is the digital AI extension of you. And that high bandwidth connection is what achieves a tight symbiosis. I think that's the best outcome. I hope so. If anybody's got better ideas, I'd love to hear it.